Hello, everybody. This is Steve McKeon.
And this is Lupe Munoz. And this is the Leadership Exchange.
Lupe, today we're going to talk about something that is just a critical part of leadership, and that's taking care of your team. And it's one of the areas that you and I aligned on early when we started working together. And I recognized that you had a really good understanding of the importance of this. And since that time, we've continued to just highlight an awareness across organizations that we work with and others even that we've been asked just to speak with about the importance of taking care of the team and really starting with understanding what we generally say safety culture, and then tied directly to leadership. What's the leadership's responsibility in that space? And I think maybe to start, Lupe, is I'll just define what we would call safety culture for the audience so that we're all starting off kind of with that foundation. And the general definition I like to use is safety culture is the shared mindset, values, and behaviors within an organization around how safety is valued and prioritized. And you'll notice that I use the term value in that definition a couple times, and you also hear the term prioritized. And one of the things that you and I have found is a lot of companies will say, yeah, safety is important. We prioritize safety. But I'm always asking, well, how do you value safety? Because one of the things that we have learned over time is just to recognize and highlight our values individually and as a company. And we know that our values over time should not drastically change. So as you and I talk about, our values 10 years ago are the same as they were 10 weeks ago. It's the same they were 10 days ago, 10 minutes ago. And so it's really kind of starting with that mindset as we go into looking at safety culture in an organization and where the leader values safety. Priorities change, and I agree we want to prioritize safety continuously in our everyday work to take care of the team, but it's got to start with it being a value in order for it to always be higher up on that priority list.
Yeah, there's a deeper meaning to value. It's kind of like my personal values versus my priorities. Sometimes my priorities may not reflect my values, or the opposite. Sometimes they will reflect my values, but I perceive values as being a lot more deeper embedded in every individual's mindset.
Yeah, I agree, Lupe. And when we talk about taking care of the team and the importance of leadership in that space, there's also a connection as a leader with, operational excellence and kind of where this safety culture fits in there. And we've learned in our career that, a strong safety culture leads to sustainable improvements in safety performance, employee engagement, and operational excellence. Or maybe an easier way to say it, that there's a positive impact to the business and there's a positive impact to the human, right? And that's so important to make sure that those two are really aligned and connected.
The way I like to set up culture, especially safety culture, is as a leader, right? I can say a lot of things, but if my behaviors do not demonstrate that value, that priority, then everybody's going to see right through it. It's kind of like Simon Sinek says in one of his talks to a big group. He talks about, hey, I can tell you to trust me, but you will not trust me. It's not just something that happens that way. I have to demonstrate things that build that trust. Same thing with safety culture. And when you really think about it, it is around trust of the leader.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, some key, what I would say, attributes or bullets around, the importance of leadership and really setting the tone for safety culture. And I'm going to be kind of cherry picking these off a recent presentation that I did, but these are all very true requirements, I would say, or things that if a leader demonstrates, you're going to see that commitment. And we understand that, leaders, as you mentioned, Lupe, shape the attitudes and behaviors towards safety. So if it's not important to you, guess what? It's not going to be important to the team. If you only focus on it when an event occurs versus, trying to proactively prevent events, that's the way your team's going to behave. So it's really, important that you have that that understood early on. Visible commitment influences employee engagement, as you referenced there, Lupe. We're going to talk a little bit about, what does it mean to model leadership in this space with some additional things that we've identified that every leader should practice. So these are the practices that really help you show the importance of safety and taking care of your team. When a leader encourages employee involvement in safety solutions, it allows them to weigh in and gains their buy-in. So in addition, but besides just directing, hey, safety important, we need to make sure nobody's getting hurt. It's, hey, what are you guys seeing that we can do better? What are you seeing that we need to do differently? Right. So it's an in-depth conversation. And I guarantee the second you ask them that, they will probably, if they haven't been asked that before, they'll probably pause and think, wow, no one's ever asked me that. And they're going to have to think. But the more you ask that type of question, the more embedded it is, and they're going to come forward every time when you bring that up with something else, and then eventually they're going to do it to their team, and they're going to have those conversations. That's really what we're trying to do. So it, really reinforces a mindset of continuous learning and proactive risk management. With some of these really simple skills. This isn't stuff that's difficult, but a lot of leaders avoid it. They believe that it belongs to maybe a safety department or safety manager, director to have these conversations. And that's really a false statement. It's got to be the people that you are responsible for taking care of. You as the leader have to ask these questions, and you have to believe in them. So that's, I guess, the first piece of it.
Open-ended questions trigger the mind. So if you're able to ask questions like, as you recommend, Steve, that really starts to open people's mind up and really start to think about safety. And you walking around asking people on a very regular basis those open-ended questions. Here's a few examples. How do we know our team is working safely today? What one activity would likely lead to an injury and why? So all these things invoke thought and really get people thinking and engaged on safety. And one thing I will say is I run into a lot of leaders that tell me that safety is like their number one thing, like, oh, it's the most important thing to me. But if you look at them throughout the whole day, their work day, very few times are they touching on safety. And I challenge them on that. Okay, hey, so how many times did you talk to somebody about safety today? Or did anything related to safety? Oh, well, I did this one thing. Okay, 5 minutes. All right. So out of an 8-hour workday, you spend 5 minutes on safety. How much of a priority do you think that translates to? Because to me, that does not seem like it's a lot of time that you're spending on supposedly your number one priority. It's a little tough love approach, but I try to do it in a way that really gets them to think about it versus, hey, I'm calling you out. But there is a little bit of accountability there. Like, hey, wait a minute. You tell me it's a big priority, but you're not spending a lot of time. So the amount of time doesn't have to be like 80, 90% necessarily, but it can't be 5% is my point.
Yeah, and it's got to be with some thought and intent, and you have to a lot of times teach new leaders or teach leads and supervisors. That is part of the job assignment, right? So you have clear expectations for delivery of the year, the month, the week, the day, and you have to each step make sure that you're showing that prioritization of safety in those activities so that the team then also understands it. And then what you said, Lupe, I think spot on, is you've got to either challenge them or really kind of explore with them. How are you demonstrating this? Example that we hear all the time is, well, I'm out talking to the team members. Okay, well, what are you talking about? What's the safety subject that you recently spoke to them about? And then what feedback did you get from that?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of times it's crickets, right? Because they go out and they say, be safe. And to them, that's prioritizing safety. And as you and I know, that's not prioritizing safety, right? That's just a wish.
It's just not very effective, right? I think that's the key, is that it's just saying those things is not very effective. A lot of times people don't even listen to that. It just goes in one ear, out the other ear. It does not require processing of anything. And so there's no deep thought. So yeah, you're right. The other thing is when you're doing the same thing, you're walking. If you're a leader and you're walking through the work area, it is a waste of time, or it's a wasted opportunity, I'll say, if you're not looking for safety, looking for hazards, looking for behaviors. You're not looking to catch anybody like, aha, I caught you, you're doing something wrong, but really trying to understand from a safety perspective, what are the risks out there? What's the risky behavior? What's the risky environment? Because if you're not doing that, I mean, you're walking through the area anyways. Why would you not be trying to look for, again, my number one value? Why would I not be spending some time focused on that as I'm walking through those areas, right? If you're walking through and like you're not even thinking of those things, I think that's an opportunity for you as a leader to really start to say, hey, you know what? I could spend a little of my time focused on that. And you honestly, eventually you get real good. You look for that. You look for quality issues. You look for work burden for the team. You
Mm-hmm.
look for GMP opportunities. A lot of things can pop up because you've kind of trained your eye and your mind to look for and process those types of things.
Yeah, and we've kind of layered this into different categories of leadership in an organization. So from your frontline supervisors and leads to your middle managers and even to your executive team. And what we found is that when you can clearly state, hey, these are the expectations that we are needing from our leadership, and start to define how they can engage in keeping safety as a value and a top priority, good things will come out of it. And Lupe, why don't we give them some examples? And let's go to like what every leader, whether you're a frontline supervisor or a middle manager, what are those attributes that they should be demonstrating, pretty much on a continuous basis?
Yeah, we'll kind of go rock through these specific ones and we can stop and talk a little bit in depth of one. But there's about 14, 15 things that as a leader, you can really help shift your team's culture with your behaviors, right? One is we already talked about when you're talking to people, when you're interacting with your leaders, asking those open-ended questions that are focused on safety. The other thing is when someone brings a safety opportunity to you, let's say you're on your walk or you're in your office, whatever, treat it as important. Do not wave it away. Commit to saying, you know what, I want to go look at it. If you have the opportunity to look at it right at that moment, do so, because you're delivering the message that, hey, this is important, so important to me that I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to go and I'm going to walk with you and I'm going to go to see and observe what you're talking about, because you caught my attention when you said, hey, there's an opportunity, a safety opportunity to improve on. Doesn't mean you're going to do it all the time, but you need to strive to do that as much as you can.
Yeah, Lupe, and if I could just kind of even talk about some of those open-ended questions, because I've heard you've asked them of team members, and they're very impactful. And one of the ones that I find really interesting, if I'm on a gimbal walk with you and you ask this question, and the question is, what one activity would likely lead to an injury or incident today? And a lot of times team members have never heard that before, or even the area supervisor, and they causes them to pause. And you have to coach them through it sometimes. Well, what are the jobs that we're doing? Well, we're handling these chemicals today. Okay, then you can follow up with, so how could that result in someone being injured? Well, I guess if they don't have the right personal protective equipment, or maybe they're not trained, or maybe it's the first time we've done this in a while, might need some refresher work. And so it's just starting with that simple conversation and dialogue that will really kind of open their eyes to the environment they're working in. And it goes beyond, hey, please be safe today, right? It's
Yeah.
what could happen based on the environment that we're working in. And just it's a great opening dialogue to have. So I just wanted to call that one out.
The other one, and we talked about, is when you're walking through the area, right? The number three is kind of like when you're walking through the area, spend time, focus on safety opportunities, looking for safety. It's more of an observation versus discussion that you're having. But always keeping an eye out for safety hazards and opportunities that, behaviors that team members are exhibiting that tell you, hey, they're putting themselves at risk, maybe, and making sure that those things that are like the proper PPE that you mentioned, Steve, those things are being had. Because if you see that that's not happening, that tells you that there's probably an opportunity either in the training, in the holding our team members accountable to ensure that they understand why it's important, but somewhere there's a breakdown if you're seeing people not necessarily wearing all of their proper PPE. And there's a fine line there where sometimes you have to correct people right away. And sometimes you need to go and talk to the supervisor of that team member and give them the feedback. And there's two camps of thought on that. One is, well, I shouldn't allow any safety opportunities to happen, to exist without me correcting them. And I understand that, and I see the value there. I think the opportunity, though, is if you tell that person and you don't talk to the leader, you don't talk to the supervisor won't be aware that that was an opportunity with that team member, right? And so there could be this sort of pattern of behavior by the team member that tells you that, hey, they may not be taking that value of safety as important as they should. And I think that's a missed opportunity sometimes when you correct someone and that doesn't make it to the leader. I prefer, if it's not a serious issue, like, hey, someone had their earplug kind of halfway in their ear, they weren't appropriately putting them in their ears, I may not say anything. I may go and say, hey, can you talk to them about like appropriate method of in putting their ear? I don't want them to get injured because of not having that PPE properly on. But some cases are like super critical, like chemical exposure, like, hey, hey, I need you to put your goggles back on. I noticed you don't have them. I think there's a line there that you could make an argument either way, but I just want to call out that it's important to include the leadership chain for that individual so people are aware when there may be opportunities with people's behavior, a certain person's behavior.
Yeah, and one coaching opportunity there, I think, Lupe, to bring up is a lot of times the supervisor may likely be with you or present in the area.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
take a minute, call them over, and then don't make it a big production either, because you can do a lot of harm in the building that psychological safety environment by calling out and chastising the individual, for whatever this incident is. And so, one of the best practices would be, hey, supervisor's aware. You're going to let the supervisor kind of drop back. You're going to hopefully coach them in advance. Hey, as we come up against these things, these are all coaching opportunities, and we need to continually make sure that the team members understand. But yeah, we to your point, we've got to be connected with that supervisor, because eventually they're the ones that are going to see that, and they're going to know it's
Yes, you need them to see that.
great.
Yeah, you need them to see that. And that's part of that sort of calibration that I do with my leaders that I work with is, making sure that we all see the same thing. And especially when it comes to safety, because it truly is a number one value. We need all our leaders and our team members to see these hazards, to see these opportunities, because, then we can really tackle the culture and shift the way we think. But if it's just one person doing that, you're not going to get anywhere. The other thing, now that we're talking about like PPE and people's behaviors, is you yourself have to demonstrate and you have to strive for perfection when it comes to you as the leader demonstrating and following all the safety rules, all the safety standards, all the requirements. It completely demolishes what you're trying to do is with the safety culture. Just with one moment of you not wearing what you should be wearing, and sometimes people will point that out to you as the leader. A lot of times people are too scared to, and they shouldn't be, but they're nervous. They don't know how you're going to take it, and so they won't call you out. And you have a strong culture when team members correct the leader. It doesn't matter what level leader, they correct them on the spot, and that leader should express appreciation and be thankful for being corrected, because we're human, we can make a
Mm-hmm.
mistake. Yeah, I've had a situation where forgot I was in a conversation with somebody. We were heading out to do a gimbal walk. I'll go out to the production floor, and in my focus in the discussion, completely like had a brain cramp about putting my vest on. And I'm walking out, and somebody's like, "Hey, Lupe, your vest." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really love that you're taking care of me and you're taking care of the team. Thank you." And I go back and correct it. And so a lot of times that doesn't happen. And that means that you need to do work with the culture, and the leader will be walking around. Everybody sees that they're not following, but nobody says anything, and that leader's not aware that on a regular basis, that completely, it's kind of like someone that says, "Hey, trust me,"
Yeah.
but always stabbing you in
Yeah.
the back.
Don't do what I do.
It's
Do what
hard
I
for people
say.
to buy
Yeah,
into that.
that never
Yeah, that
works.
type of thing.
Lupe, I think the other, we talk about behaviors, is showing your team members how important their safety is to you personally, right? And showing how much you care for them in
Yes.
and around the work environment. And you can't say it enough, honestly. I mean, it's one of those things that just has to be constant reminder. And if you're out there very stoic all the time and on the soapbox telling people what to do, they're not going to care. But when you see that opportunity to go up and just direct one-on-one with an individual and just tell them how much you care for them and appreciative that they are wearing the right equipment, or you notice that they were doing job safely and effectively and encourage that behavior, it just, that's gold, right? That sticks with that individual for a long time.
Yeah, it's super powerful, Steve. And you're right. Like you have to mean it. You can't say this if you don't mean it. People get blown away when because I like to ask people like, "Hey, do you know why it's important that you wear your earplugs or that you wear your eye protection?" And they'll say, "Well, yeah, because I don't want to get in trouble." I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe that. Okay, but there's a deeper reason for that." I said, "Why is that?" Like, "Well, my safety." Yes, your safety. I want to go home the way I came, and I have loved ones that I'm responsible to support. I go, yes, that's all. That is very, very true and important. I said, but here's one more reason. And this is uncomfortable for some leaders. I don't understand that, but some leaders do have a problem. They feel like it's, oh, well, I shouldn't be saying that to my team members. But, I'm like, it's because I care for you. As part of this team, you mean something to me. And it's amazing the look I get from the team members like, what? Like, you care for me? I go, yeah, I care for you. I care for everybody on our team. We're like a family, right? That can be extremely powerful if you mean it. First, you got to mean it. If it'll come through as
Mm-hmm.
fake if you don't. But then people really start to get a feeling that, wow, like this safety stuff's a lot deeper than I'm not going to get in trouble, right? And that's when the magic starts to happen, is when you can really get people to really believe and understand that you truly do care for them. And they're like, you know what? I understand now this whole safety thing's about caring for each other,
Yeah.
you know?
And good things happen, as we know, when you start off with safety is that primer, then the chance of having good quality increases, your productivity metrics increase. And so there's this whole business side of it as well. And a lot of times leaders will just focus on the business side and not get the people side correct and understand why they're not doing good in each of those areas. So I think one, you really have to adopt safety as a value to you personally as a leader. You have to truly show that you care about your team. And if you don't, you're probably in the wrong job, right? You probably need to go find
Yeah.
something else to do, because if you don't have that fundamental set of values. Lupe, you and I have been working together for several years now, and through that process, I've identified behaviors that we spoke about here today. We've also got a list of clear expectations in this realm that a leader should follow, and then what we call leader standard work. And I think, those are great topics we'll save for another podcast if you agree, because I think today we really just
Agreed.
wanted to capture behaviors and the importance of setting safety as a value so it stays really elevated in the priority list of what needs to be looked after when you talk about taking care of your team and making sure others truly believe you're taking care of them as well.
Yeah.
Parting thoughts today on this episode, Lupe?
I'm just going to reference Maslow's pyramid. So those of you that don't know Maslow's pyramid, he was a psychologist, I think he was a psychologist. He created this pyramid, and basically think of the pyramid with different layers, right? And the previous layer must be established before the next layer can be, built. And the very base of that is, I don't remember the term he used, but basically are like the fundamental needs that people have, the basic needs, right? So think of, food, shelter, right? And then the other one was safety. So physical safety. I bring that up because if you don't have a good safety culture within your team, within your organization, you are so far down that pyramid that all the other great things that team members could do, and specifically the pyramid at the very peak is like, how do you tap into people's potential, full potential? You're never going to get there. If I were a leader going into an organization, the very first thing and the only thing I would focus on to start is the safety culture. And this has been my sort of MO when I go and join teams, is the very first thing, because I know that without that established, then I have no chance of doing anything else, in a positive way with the team.
Yeah, well said, Lupe. And again, just want to encourage listeners of the podcast to really go and put some of the things that we've talked about into action. And if you believe you're already doing a lot of them, continue to ask yourself, how well are you doing them? And maybe look for a couple of those things that we pitched today as additional conversations you can have with your team to help just really elevate the importance of safety as a value, keep it up high on that priority list, and engage the team in those conversations would
Yep.
be the other recommended ask. But Lupe, this was a great session. Thank you very much.
Yep. The discussion I have with you are always full and very relevant. And just for our listeners, we will be putting some of the tools, like we'll put Maslow's pyramid or a link to it if you want to, understand it a little better. We'll put the 5 behaviors that we talked about on a list so that you can, sometimes it's hard to take notes while maybe you're driving and listening or riding a bike and listening. That way, if you thought this was very meaningful to you, you can grab that information.
And as always, give us some feedback. You can catch us at Instagram and let us know what you're enjoying and what you would like us maybe to talk about next. We do have a couple exciting guests coming up that we'll be doing some podcast interviews with as well around leadership.
Yeah.
And look forward to sharing those with you in the near future. Okay, Lupe, we'll go ahead and close it out for today. So thank you to our listeners. This is Steve McKee.
And this is Lupe Munoz.
And thank you for listening to the Leadership Exchange. Have a great day.